He scrubbed every car like it was his own, even the ones that cost more than his entire life savings. Rain, snow, or scorching heat, Harold never missed a shift, not once in 32 years. Until the morning, an angry man in a $1,000 suit stepped out of a black SUV and decided Harold's time was up. Before we dive in, if this story moves you, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to keep the stories coming your way. Just a heads up, we don't just share stories here, we invite you to experience them. There's a little quiz at the end, just for fun. It's our way of saying thanks for watching closely and spotting the subtle moments others might miss. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. Harold Jensen was 68 when it all unraveled. He'd been working the same job at a local full-service car wash in Glendale, Arizona, the kind where customers sip free coffee while someone like Harold bends his back to make their wheels shine. The place wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and more importantly, it gave Harold purpose. Until one man, Vincent Rourke, the CEO of a Fortune 500 tech company, decided Harold wasn't worth his time. That moment, that decision, would come back to haunt Vincent in a way no one could have seen coming. The morning was cold, dry, and silent, the kind of winter morning where the frost doesn't melt until noon. Harold had already been there 2 hours before sunrise. He had a system. Start with tire shine, move to mirrors, then finish with the windshield. He took pride in the details. By 9:40 a.m., the black Cadillac Escalade pulled in. It had out-of-state plates, and the engine purred like money. Vincent Rourke stepped out with his Bluetooth still in his ear, shouting orders into the air like it owed him answers. He didn't glance at Harold, not at first. He walked straight into the lounge, never noticing the thin, elderly man in the worn-out gloves already circling his car with a rag and a bottle of detailing spray. 15 minutes later, Vincent returned. That's when it happened. He ran a single finger along the edge of his side mirror and found a smear, just a smudge, barely visible in the morning light. But to Vincent, it was unacceptable. Without a second thought, he snapped. "You call this clean?" he barked. "Is this your standard? I'm running a company worth $6 billion and I can't get a clean mirror in this dump?" Harold apologized. Sincerely. He even reached for a fresh rag. But it was too late. Vincent stormed into the manager's office, demanded someone be held accountable, and by noon, Harold was off the clock. For good. No pension, no farewell. Just an envelope with his final check and a half-hearted, "We're sorry, but the customer was very upset." That night, Harold sat alone in his rented one-bedroom apartment, staring at a wall of framed photos, his wife who passed 6 years ago, his 2 sons who'd moved across the country, and his old employee badge with the number 003. Meanwhile, Vincent Rourke flew back to San Francisco, satisfied he'd handled the situation. He never gave Harold another thought. But life doesn't forget the quiet ones. 6 years later, Vincent's name was everywhere, but not for the reasons he liked. It started with a leaked email, then a whistleblower, then a full-blown investigation into ethics violations and illegal firings. Within a year, Vincent was out, fired by his own board, his name stripped from the company website, and his severance frozen during litigation. Public sympathy? Non-existent. He retreated to a small coastal town in Oregon, hoping to disappear. His money, once endless, was now locked up in legal fees. And his Escalade? Gone. Sold for cash. That's when he saw him again. Outside a small grocery store in Newport, a silver Toyota Corolla was parked, spotless. A man, maybe in his 70s now, was wiping down the windows with the same patient grace. Vincent stared in disbelief. It was Harold, still working, still kind. But now, Harold ran his own mobile detailing service, Jensen's Shine and Go, and the reviews were glowing. Locals loved him. He was booked solid. Even the mayor used his service. Vincent lowered his head and kept walking. He didn't ask for a car wash. And Harold? He never said a word, just kept polishing. Vincent stood there for a moment longer than he meant to. The wind tugged at the collar of his coat, and for the first time in years, he felt cold. Not the kind of chill you get from ocean air, the kind that starts somewhere beneath the ribs, gnaws at the gut, and says, "This is what you did." He turned, walked briskly to his car, an aging Subaru Outback he'd bought secondhand after selling everything else, and drove off without looking back. But the image of Harold stayed with him, every detail, the slow, deliberate way he buffed the paint, the slight hunch in his back, the worn sneakers, the gentle hum under his breath. The man looked peaceful, and that was the part Vincent couldn't stand. The next morning, Vincent did something he hadn't done in years. He walked to a diner. No Postmates, no delivery, no driver waiting at the curb. He sat in a cracked red booth near the window with a chipped coffee mug and a slice of cold apple pie. Across the street, Harold's Corolla was parked again. This time, he was working on a dusty pickup, chatting casually with the owner, even laughing once. Vincent watched from the diner like a ghost haunting a world he didn't recognize. "Need a refill?" the waitress asked, and he flinched. Yeah, please." She poured the coffee and smiled politely, but he didn't notice. His mind was somewhere else. It wasn't guilt. Not entirely. Vincent had always believed in consequences, just never thought they'd land on his side of the table. But seeing Harold again, still moving forward after everything, it gnawed at him. Because the truth was, Harold wasn't the only life Vincent had upended. There were others. Quiet firings, public humiliations, career-ending decisions handed down because someone got on his nerves or failed to anticipate his mood. He used to call it clearing the path. Now, sitting in a small-town diner with yesterday's pie, he wondered if the path had led straight off a cliff. By the third day, he started walking past Harold's work spot more often. Not speaking, just observing. He watched how Harold greeted each customer with a slight bow of the head, how he carried a clipboard with a checklist, how he adjusted his technique depending on the car's model. It wasn't just labor, it was care, purpose. Something Vincent used to claim he had, back when he still believed being CEO meant something other than control. He remembered a boardroom speech he once gave. People are like parts of a machine. Replace what's faulty, reward what's efficient. He said it like it was wisdom. But what if he was the broken part? One afternoon, a man in a wheelchair wheeled up to Harold's Corolla while he was packing up. They exchanged a few words. Harold opened the trunk and pulled out a collapsible stool and a mitt. Together, they started wiping down the man's van. Vincent couldn't look away. Later, after the man left, Vincent crossed the street slowly. Harold didn't acknowledge him at first. He was reorganizing the cleaning supplies, humming again. "Hey," Vincent said. Silence. I think we've met before," Vincent added. Harold didn't flinch, but his hands stopped moving. "I remember," Harold said calmly, still not looking up. "Your mirror had a smudge." Vincent winced. "I wanted to say, that day shouldn't have ended the way it did." Harold turned, his eyes quiet but steady. "It did." Vincent swallowed. "I was under a lot of pressure back then. Running a company that size, the stress. Did that stress ever buy groceries?" Harold interrupted, his voice soft but edged with steel. "Did it ever keep the lights on when the job was gone?" Vincent opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. Harold looked at him. Really looked at him, for the first time. "You're not here to make peace. You're here to feel better." Vincent stepped back, stung. "That's not true." "It is," Harold said, bending to retrieve his bucket. "But I don't blame you for that. We all need something." Vincent didn't sleep that night. He kept turning over the conversation in his head, dissecting every word. He wasn't sure what hurt more, Harold's calm or the fact that nothing he said could undo it. The next morning, he opened his laptop for the first time in weeks. The cursor blinked on a blank document. He started typing, "This is what I took from a man named Harold. This is what I learned watching him polish other people's cars while I try to wipe clean my own past." Then he stopped. What was he really writing? An apology? A confession? A memoir? And would Harold even care? 3 days later, Vincent showed up again, this time holding 2 coffees. "I figured you might need something warm," he said. Harold took the cup, nodded. "Thanks." They stood quietly for a while. "You don't have to do this," Harold said, eyes on the hood of the car he was working on. "I know," Vincent replied. "I just don't know what else to do anymore." Harold dipped the rag in soap. "You ever wash your own car?" Vincent laughed, a short breath of disbelief. "Honestly? No." Harold stepped aside. "Grab that mitt. You're about to learn." The next half hour passed in silence. Vincent fumbled at first. Too much pressure, wrong angles, streaks everywhere. Harold didn't scold him. He just corrected, gently. "Let the rag glide, like you're not forcing it, just helping it shine." There was something about the rhythm of it, the simplicity. For the first time in a long time, Vincent felt still. When they finished, the car gleamed under the late afternoon sun. Harold stepped back, admiring the work. Vincent did too. "I forgot what it felt like," he murmured. "To actually finish something, not delegate it, not sign it off, just do it." Harold handed him a towel. "Hard work doesn't make you humble. It just reminds you what you used to be." Vincent nodded slowly. "So what happens now?" Harold looked at him, not unkindly. "That's not my question to answer." The following week, Vincent began volunteering at the local senior center. Not to redeem himself, he wasn't sure that was possible, but because for once, he wanted to do something with no return on investment. He still passed Harold's Corolla some mornings. Sometimes they nodded, sometimes they didn't. Words weren't always necessary. But then one day, Vincent showed up, and Harold wasn't there. No car, no supplies, no humming. A woman sweeping the storefront nearby noticed him looking. "You looking for Mr. Jensen?" Vincent turned. "Yeah, is he okay?" The woman paused. "He had a fall 2 days ago. Nothing broken, thank God. But the doctor said he needs to rest for a while." "Where is he now?" She shrugged. "Home, I guess. But he doesn't like visitors." Vincent stood frozen on the sidewalk, coffee still in hand. That night, he wrote again. This time, he wrote about silence, about the ache of unfinished apologies, about how sometimes the people we hurt the most never fight back. And he left the page blank after the final sentence, because Harold's story, their story, wasn't finished yet. The next morning, Vincent stood outside the small craftsman-style house at the edge of town. The lawn was tidy but bare, the porch clean but unadorned. No wind chimes, no welcome mat. Just a pale green door with the paint peeling at the edges, like everything here had aged with dignity, but no help. He held a paper bag with 2 blueberry muffins and a thermos of coffee. His fingers hesitated over the doorbell, but he pressed it anyway. Nothing. He waited, then knocked. Still nothing. He was about to turn back when the door creaked open. Harold stood there in a beige cardigan and socks, leaning slightly on a cane. His face was pale, and there were deeper shadows beneath his eyes than the last time Vincent saw him. "What do you want?" Harold asked flatly, no anger, just tired. "I brought breakfast," Vincent said, lifting the bag. Harold looked at it, then stepped aside silently. Inside, the house was as modest as Vincent expected. Beige walls, clean surfaces, Photos of a younger Harold with a woman and 2 boys. A calendar on the fridge was half filled with handwritten notes. Dentist, library, Rick's birthday. There was no extravagance, no clutter, just life, kept together with routine. Vincent set the muffins on the table. "I heard you had a fall." "I tripped on a damn hose," Harold said, lowering himself into a kitchen chair. "Body's not what it used to be." "Mind still sharp," Vincent offered, trying to smile. Harold didn't return it. They sat in silence, the kind that stretches, not comfortably, but purposefully. Vincent cleared his throat. "You don't owe me anything, I know that." "Good," Harold replied, "because I've already given too much to people who took what they wanted and left." Vincent nodded. "I understand." Harold looked at him with something between pity and irritation. "Number, you want to understand. That's different." The clock on the wall ticked, loud in the quiet. Vincent glanced at a framed photo on the shelf. It showed Harold and a boy in graduation robes, arms around each other, beaming. "That your son?" Harold followed his gaze. "Number, that's my nephew, Ellis, my sister's boy. Came to live with us after his parents passed. I raised him." Vincent nodded. "He looks proud." "He was," Harold said. "Back then." "What happened?" Harold's eyes didn't move from the photo. "Same thing that always happens. Time. Ambition. Other people's voices. He stopped calling 2 years ago." "Why?" Harold shrugged. "Maybe I reminded him of who he was before he got fancy. Maybe he just got tired of me." Vincent leaned forward, elbows on the table. "That's hard to believe." Harold chuckled, dry. "Believe it. You're not the only one who leaves when people stop being useful." The words hit harder than Vincent expected. He didn't respond. Harold stood slowly, steadied himself on the chair. "You keep showing up, Vincent. But what do you want from me?" "I don't know," Vincent said honestly. "Maybe just to be near something real." Harold nodded once. "That's not mine to give. You want real? Go build it." The visit became a habit. Every few days, Vincent would stop by, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit. Harold never asked for anything, but he never turned Vincent away either. They spoke in half conversations, about the weather, the news, old TV shows, but never about that day at the car wash, never about the firing, never about the line that had been crossed, not just professionally, but humanly. That line still hung in the air between them, unspoken, sharp as ever. One afternoon, Harold was sitting on the porch, a blanket over his knees, reading a paperback novel. Vincent arrived with 2 sandwiches from the deli. "You know," Harold said, setting the book down, "my wife, Marla, used to say every person gets one true test in life." Vincent opened the sandwich wrapper. "Did she say what it looked like?" "Number. Just that it wouldn't be obvious until you were already halfway through failing it." Vincent let out a breath. "Feels about right." Harold took a slow bite, then added, "She forgave people too easily. That was her flaw. I think that's why I don't forgive easily anymore." "Do you think you should?" Vincent asked. Harold looked out across the quiet street. "I think some people mistake forgiveness for a handshake, like it's a transaction. But sometimes, forgiveness is just letting it be yours to carry, not mine." Vincent looked down at the porch wood beneath his feet, worn smooth by years of steps and rocking chairs. "So, I carry it." Harold nodded. "You already do. The question is whether you'll let it weigh you down or make you walk different." Weeks passed. The days grew longer, the air warmer. Spring crept in gently. Vincent helped Harold set up a small folding table outside the house for neighbors to drop by. He placed a sign, detailing temporarily closed. Come say hi anyway. People did come. Old customers, curious passers-by, Folks who'd seen Harold scrubbing bumpers for years without knowing his name. They brought flowers, pie, stories. One teenage boy came by with a toy car he wanted cleaned, just because he'd heard Harold made things shine. Vincent watched it all like someone witnessing a parade he'd never known existed. These people cared about Harold, not because of what he did, but how he was. And yet, Harold never smiled too long, never stayed too warm. He kept a certain piece of himself locked up, protected. And Vincent was starting to realize no amount of showing up would break into that part. Then one evening, something changed. Vincent brought over a stack of folded newspapers. "I thought maybe you'd want these. Your name's in one of them." Harold took the top one, eyebrows raised. "Why would my name be in the paper?" Vincent hesitated, then said, "I submitted an op-ed. About you. About that day, and everything since. They published it yesterday." Harold didn't open the paper. He just set it beside the chair. Vincent waited. Harold stared ahead. "You trying to make me a symbol?" "No," Vincent said. "Just trying to tell the truth." "Whose truth?" Harold asked. Vincent didn't answer. That night, Vincent walked home alone, unsure if he'd crossed a line or simply drawn attention to one that never disappeared. When he got home, his voicemail had a single message. It was Harold. "I read it. Took me a while. Made me cry in one part. That doesn't mean I forgive you. But it means I see you're not pretending anymore. That matters." Vincent replayed the message 3 times. Each time, the same feeling settled in his chest. Not relief, not regret. Just stillness. A week later, Harold didn't come to the porch. The following day, same thing. On the 3rd day, Vincent knocked. No answer. Concern mounting, he went around to the back door. It was unlocked. He stepped inside. "Harold?" Silence. He moved through the kitchen, past the living room, toward the hallway. Then he stopped. A suitcase was packed near the front door. On top of it, a folded note with his name, Vincent. He picked it up with shaking hands and read, "I'm going to stay with Ellis for a while. He called out of the blue last night, said he wanted to try again, start fresh. I don't know what that means yet, but I'm going to find out. I left the key under the mat. The supplies are in the shed. You know how to shine things now. Don't let them get dusty. Harold." Vincent stood in the hallway, the paper trembling in his hand. For a long time, he didn't move. Then he stepped back, opened the front door, and looked out at the empty street. The house was still. But something in him had shifted. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a passing of something sacred. Some people chase success so hard, they forget who they trampled to get there. But the real measure of a life isn't the title on a business card. It's how quietly your name is spoken in someone else's story. Years later, with warmth or with warning. Vincent thought he had power when he signed paychecks. But Harold had something stronger. He had respect that couldn't be bought, a life of quiet dignity that no scandal could stain. In the end, it wasn't Harold who needed fixing. It was the man who once thought a mirror smudge was more offensive than a man's livelihood. And maybe that's the twist life gives us, the chance to become better, but only after everything shiny has dulled. If this story moved you, don't just scroll past. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And remember, there's always a quiz at the end. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. Like this video if you felt something. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next powerful story. Because here on Fiction Echoes, the story doesn't end. It stays with you. Quiz. How many times was Vincent Rourke mentioned in this story?